Cool. Can everyone see my screen? All right.
Yeah, all good.
Cool. So, hey everyone. Welcome to today's Cypress Lunch and Learn session. To those who are new, I'm Marie, and I currently work as a principal test automation engineer at News UK. So far we've been looking at how to use Cypress to help us automate some of our testing requirements, but we haven't really talked about how you can integrate this test to a continuous integration pipeline. As you might know, nowadays continuous integration is a must, especially as we move towards DevOps ways of working. So I figured for our last Cypress Lunch and Learn session, we'll look at how you can get started with CircleCI and Cypress. If you want to ask me any follow-up questions, as always, I have my Twitter handle here at mcruzdrake and also my LinkedIn ID, Marie-Drake. But before I start, I just really want to say thanks, Billy, and to the rest of the expertise recruitment, for letting me speak and share my learnings about Cypress to the wider testing community. It's been a really great experience. I've, learned loads of new things, especially with presenting, and there's been a lot of like technical like hiccups that I had to refine, and of course my daughter joining the meetup as well. So thank you, and it's just really been an amazing journey so far. So just to give an introduction as to what I'll be talking about today. So first we'll talk about what's continuous integration, to anyone who's not familiar with the term, and why do we need continuous integration. We'll then look at what CircleCI is and how it can help us. And we'll look at a couple of Cypress examples, starting, with using the official Cypress Orbs. We'll look at how to attach artifacts to your test run. So if you have a custom test report that you need to attach to your CI pipeline, we'll look into doing that. And as an alternative, we'll also look at using the Cypress Docker image. And then finally, just to close it off, we'll look at some guidelines and some best practices that might help you maximize, the benefit of integrating your tests to a continuous integration pipeline. So what is continuous integration? The best explanation that I can find is, of course, from none other than Martin Fowler. He talked about continuous integration being a software development practice where members of the team will integrate their work frequently to a build server. Each integration, would then be verified automatically by a tool, and then any errors are detected as early as possible. Continuous integration, or I'll just refer to it as CI. It enables DevOps, ways of working. It focuses on the automation, of building, of testing, and releasing changes to production by using appropriate tools. Without using CI, so we'll end up with a situation called integration hell. If you've read, books by Jin Kim, so he wrote the Phoenix Project and the Unicorn Project. Here's my not so good illustration at what it will be like without CI. So let's say we have 4 different developers, working on different changes locally, and then rather than integrating their changes as earlier on, they have a dedicated day, called merging day, which everyone, really dreads because they end up to be time consuming, and oftentimes, it leads to a lot of conflicts and basically lots of frustration. Eventually, they will deploy it to a testing environment. So as you can see here, we've got a frustrated tester because a lot of the existing features are broken, or the features that they're expecting, from the build is not even there. In return, because of all these different issues, deploying to changes it's not very frequent. Maybe even 6 months or more. So if you haven't read these 2 books, I highly recommend it. It really gives a great overview, as to how DevOps can help us, and it's just a really like funny book as well to read. So why continuous integration? So apart from avoiding the integration hell, it also avoids the problem of, hey, it works on my machine, it should work on your machine too. If it's run on a CI server, you have the confidence that it will work when it works, and then it will fail when it fails. It also provides a faster feedback loop. So with CI, you don't have to wait for hours, or days to find out if you have broken any existing features or tests. Especially if you have automated tests running as part of your CI process, this increases everyone's confidence that their new changes can be merged in safely. What I've seen as well as standard practice is that for CI to be effective, so when a developer creates a pull request locally and pushes it up to a source control server like GitHub, the feedback loop should be should be within 10 minutes, or less, so that the productivity is not affected. It also promotes better visibility because the team can understand easily why the build is broken, and they can then fix the issues earlier on as it happens. So it also enables you to test smaller changes. So because you're continuously integrating, your changes to your build pipelines, the team can also just easily, test smaller changes rather than, testing a big chunk. And this will then lead to a faster and much more safer deployment. So once you have CI placed in, you can look at doing continuous delivery and continuous deployment. So continuous delivery is just an extension of CI. So with continuous delivery, you're also automating the software delivery, release process. So if you need to deploy to different test environments and also to production, you can do so by approving a deployment job. with with this approach, what I've seen is changes will be deployed, to dev or staging environment automatically if all the checks are passing. And then once you want to release to production, you have to approve a job manually. And then the continuous deployment, on the other hand, is so that's the hardest. So that's the step up to continuous delivery. So with continuous deployment, everything is fully automated, including the production release. So just to sort of visualize what a typical CI workflow would look like. So you can see here that a developer works on a feature. They check their changes into a source control server like GitHub, and then the CI server here, it will fetch any new changes, and then it will build the project. It will run all the tests that are in place, and it will then notify or send a report if the job has success or failed. So we'll see later on the demo that the GitHub notifications are in place already if you're using Circle CI, but you can also customize this. So if there's any failures in your pipeline, you can integrate it to your communication channel, such as Slack, for example. So if there is any failures, then the team is made aware already. Cool. So I've been talking about continuous integration, how it can help us. Let's now move on to some of the tools that can help us. And one of the tool is called Circle CI. So with Circle CI, it basically enables you to implement continuous integration, continuous delivery, or even continuous deployment. It's just one of the many tools out there that we can use. You can also use other tools such as Jenkins, GitLab, TeamCity as well. And the great thing about Circle CI is the configuration on how you build your app. How to write your tests, not write, but how to integrate your tests, and how to do the releases. It's all done via a YAML configuration file, which makes it easier to understand. And it also has direct integration, to GitHub, so you can set up CI quickly if you have a GitHub account. So to get started, I mentioned you need to have GitHub set up. If you don't, you need to create an account first and just push like a test project. So yep, so I mentioned you push your changes to a branch, go to circleci.com, you read the documentation, you create a folder on the root of your project and you call it .circleci. And then inside that, you create a file called config.yaml, add all the relevant um, configuration. You then push the changes, to that branch, and you just wait for CircleCI to run it, and it looks simple, right? Of course, we'll look at some examples to get you started. Cool. So just to show you quickly how easy it is to set up CircleCI with GitHub. So I've added a video clip here, and basically, if you go to circleci.com, just gonna play the video. So if you click go to app, this will list all the different organizations that you're part of. Once you've selected the organization, you just select a specific project that you want to set up. So in this case, I'm gonna click that one, and you can either add the config manually or add it automatically, because I'll just pause it for a bit. So with Circle CI, there's a lot of predefined templates that you can use. So because with this demo, I'll be using like Cypress. So I've just selected Node, and you can automatically just add that config. Just resume the video. Cool. So as you can see here, there's already a pipeline running. And then if you go back to the project, a pull request is automatically created. So the pull request here will contain the sample config. And then you see here that the GitHub notification is in place already, which is really good. And then if you click the details, you can just see, the steps that it will run for this particular job. Cool. So in Circle CI, there is a term, called orbs. An orb in Circle CI is basically a reusable package of YAML configuration that you can use to simplify your own setup. So I find this particularly helpful if you want to reuse the same configuration across different GitHub projects. So as an example, if you need to set up, Cypress multiple times, rather than duplicating the setup again and again, you can just use the official Cypress orb. The only limitation is, some companies, they actually only allow the use of official orbs. So as you can see here, Cypress doesn't have the certified tag. Yeah. For example, in our workplace, we only really allow the certified orb. So I couldn't use the Cypress orb in our in our work projects. So that's why for this demo, I'll be showing how to do the setup using Cypress orb, and also how to use the Cypress Docker images, just so you have a couple of options. If you do opt to using uncertified orbs, there is a setting that you have to modify. So if you go to your organization settings, click security, you just need to toggle yes to allow uncertified orbs, and you'll be able to use the Cypress orb. Cool. So now that we've seen what Circle CI is, what is an orb, let's now look at what a simple Circle CI configuration would look like on how to integrate your Cypress tests. So you can see here that I only have 8 lines of code. And with this 8 lines of code, you have that increased confidence already that you can integrate your Cypress tests on the Circle CI pipeline. So let's walk through this one by one. So with Circle, you always have to specify the version number. So in this case, I want to use the version 2.1 because Orbs, it was introduced on this version specifically. So if you use a version that's much lower, so you won't be able to use the orbs. So make sure that you use 2.1. We then define what orbs to use. So in this case, it's a Cypress IO orb, and I highly recommend hard coding the version number here. So for this demo, I've hard coded it as 1.25.0. So this is good practice because in the future, if there is a new release for this orb, you don't really want any unexpected failures in your Circle CI pipeline. And then next, we define the workflow that we want. So for this workflow, I've called it build as an example. And a workflow in Circle CI is just a collection of jobs. So I only have one job because it's just for running the Cypress test. But basically, if you have multiple jobs, it will allow you to run some of these jobs simultaneously. So let's say you have a build job for the application that you're testing, and at the same time, if you have, let's say, different types of tests, so you have integration tests, you have visual tests, you can create separate jobs for those, and then you can just run them in parallel. So a job in Circle CI is it's basically just a collection of steps. So a steps is basically a sequential list of the steps that you need to do in order to achieve that particular job. So the steps are run sequentially, and it's run on a single container in Circle CI. And in this example, so I've defined a job which contains one step for now. So this command here, Cypress /run, this is very specific to Cypress Orb. So if you're using Cypress Orb, they've got a list of specific commands that you have to use, and one of those command is called run. And I've just given it a name, and I've called it run end-to-end test. If you want more information, around using the Cypress Orb, I highly recommend going over this document here. Cool. So for the next couple of minutes, I'm gonna switch to my VS Code as well as my terminal to look at more examples. So what I'm planning to do is I'm gonna create a branch so that you can see like the actual workflow from the beginning. Hopefully everyone can see this. So I'm currently on my master branch on this Cypress CI project. So to create a branch in GitHub, so if you're familiar with GitHub, you just have to do git checkout, and then B, which stands for the branch name, and then I'm just gonna call it um, Circle CI demo orbs. Cool. Let's open this project in our VS Code. I'm just gonna expand this one. Cool. So at the moment, this is just a sample Cypress project, but because I've just used their default examples, I don't really want to run all of the other examples in the pipeline because it might take a while. So I'm just gonna leave the first two and then delete the rest. Cool. So we have two tests that we want to run. And then I'm going to create a folder called .circleci. And then inside, we'll create a config.yaml. Okay. So as I mentioned, we need to provide the version number. So in this case, it's version 2.1. And then the orbs that you want to use. So in this case, we want to use the Cypress official orb. I think it's 1.25.0. And then we define the workflow. So in this case, we only really have one workflow. And I'm just going to call it build. That's the name of our workflow. And then inside, we have to give it a job. So again, it's very specific to this particular Cypress orb. So it's called Cypress run. And what you can do is you can name this particular job as well. So just to make it more more defined that this is for running the end-to-end test. Okay. The only thing that I find that I make a lot of mistakes is because it's a YAML file, like the tabbing and the spaces. That's quite easy to get mistakes. So before pushing this to GitHub, you can download the Circle CI command line. So I think it's Circle CI and then config validate. So whoop, open no such file. Why? It's there. Am I on a different branch? This is weird. Wait a minute. Yeah, it's here. The file is there. Why is it complaining that it's not here? Oh, technical issues always happen. Uh, nope. Let's close that. Okay. Just open this project again. It smells nice, bebe. All right. I'm just gonna add this to um the GitHub repo because I'm not sure why it can't detect this .circle CI, but let's just push it. Um, so I'm just gonna give it a commit message. So let's just say that this is for initial Circle CI setup, and then we'll see if we get any errors when we push this. Hit push, and then the name of our project. Cool. And then if I go back here, yep, I can see that there is one pull request. Yeah, okay. It did find it. Okay. Cool. Yes, build error. And that's why I wanted to validate it locally. So let's look at what the error is. Warning, no configuration. Maybe I rename it wrong. .circle CI. Okay, I'll see if there's some advices on the chat. The file is circle. Ah, yeah. Of course, it has to be called Circle CI. I should have looked at the chat. Okay, let's rename this as Circle CI. Okay, now it should work. Okay. Cool. So if we do Circle CI config validate, so now it should find it. Okay, there you go. Thank you. That was such a silly mistake. And then we'll just commit it as rename to Circle CI. Cool. And then we'll just push this branch. Demo orbs. Cool. And hopefully this time it will all work. So if I click the details here, so what you might see when you use this orb is there's a lot of steps that have been called, but we haven't really set this up. So these different steps are all part of the official Cypress orb. So it will, take away all these different complexities, and we just really need to run that one specific command. So this might take a while, actually, but if anyone has any sort of questions, maybe I can answer some of them. But if not, you can listen to my daughter singing, which is, yeah, quite annoying. Cool. So I can see that Cypress has been installed successfully using version 4.9.0, and it's just doing some other things like like saving cache, and then I think after this it will then run the two tests that we have specified. Cool. So I'm thinking while Gab Gabby, wait a second, guys. Cool. So we can see here that the Cypress tests are now running. And while we're waiting for this, ay Gabi. Okay. Um. Uh, Okay. So in terms of the next step, you might notice here that so if I just expand the run Cypress test, I'm actually I've integrated Mocha Awesome to this particular project. So if you do have a requirement to attach a test report, or if you want to attach the video artifacts that Cypress will generate automatically after each test run, we can do that easily in CircleCI. So I'm going to go back to my Visual Studio Code, and then what we want to do now is we want to add some additional post steps after this particular job here is run. So we can add the keyword post steps, and then this will basically consist of different steps that we will do when this job is finished. So we'll say that we want to run um, the command to attach some report to our artifact in CircleCI. So you might notice that if I go to my package.json, I have a command here that I can use to generate an HTML report. So this is just using Mocha Awesome. And what I'll do is I'm just going to copy this command here, and then we'll say npm run, and then the command. No, sorry, so this is not part of the run, that's part of the command. So on the run we have to specify the name and the command. So on the command, that's where we put npm run, and then the command that we need to run. The name is just to make it much more clear. So in this case, I'm gonna say generate mocha awesome report. If you also want to store the video artifact, so you can see here that we have two video examples here. So you can use the predefined command called store. I think it's store artifacts. Yeah. And then you just have to provide the path as to which folders you want to persist on CircleCI artifacts. So in this case, I want to add the Cypress videos. So we'll just say Cypress videos here. Go ahead and save this, and then let's just try to validate our config again to see if everything is working. Cool. Just gonna fix this error here. Post steps. I think it's part of that. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay, cool. Um, and let's see if that will work. Cool, so it's now valid. So let's commit this again. And then let's just push this straight to GitHub. So what you'll see now is after our test has finished, it will then attach the HTML report as well as the video artifacts as part of our test run. So just gonna go back to the test project that I have. It's not this one. Baby, wait a minute. But you have to sing quietly. All right. Cool. You might note. Okay, you can go sing. All right. So you might notice here that on the second retry, it's much more faster than the first one, and it's because the Cypress has been cached on Circle CI. So if you run it again the second time, it will be much more quicker. So as we can see here, we're already running the Cypress test, and I'm expecting that after this test, it's going to run additional steps to add the HTML report as well as the video artifacts. Cool. Let's just look at the chat to see if there's oh yeah. Cool. Cool. So you can see here that everything is pausing. Okay. And then if you click artifacts here, oh, I didn't. Okay, I'll fix the other issue, but yeah, you can see here that the video files is added, and this is quite helpful. So particularly in our case, when it's failing, you can just ask the developer to look at the artifacts on Circle CI, and rather than asking us why the test failed, they can just look at the artifacts on their pipeline instead. Cool. And I think because I'm running the command to generate the report, but I'm not storing it as an artifact. So I'm just going to um, copy the same thing. And in this case, because all of the test report is actually saved on this folder called test report, so I'm just going to type test report here. And then I think that's it. That should be for that should be it for the first example using Circle CI, Cypress Orbs, as well as attaching reports to your HTML file. Cool. I'm not gonna wait for this to run because it will work anyway, because the last step is just attaching the report as an artifact. So this is great if your company allows uncertified orbs, but what if you're not allowed? So what I'll show now is how to do it with using the Cypress Docker image. So for this demo, let's switch to a different branch so that it's all on a clean slate. Um, so this will be Circle CI demo Docker. Cool. And then we're gonna do the same thing. So just going to delete all this oop, all these different files here. And then we're going to add our Circle CI config. So that's been deleted. That's fine. I won't make the same mistake that I did a while ago. So type Circle CI, and then inside we'll do config.yaml. So in terms of the first steps, it's basically the similar step. We'll add the version number that we need, and then I'm going to show another way of doing it. So first, let's define a particular job in Circle CI. So I'll call it jobs, and let's call this run Cypress test. Cool. And there is a specific command that you can use if you're going to use the Docker image. So if you type the word Docker, there is a property here as well called image, and this is where we're going to use the Cypress official base image. So for now, I'm just going to use Cypress base, but I'm going to add it to the resources later where you can get the official Cypress Docker images. So in here, I'm just going to use a particular version. And then in terms of steps, so we have to make sure that we add all the steps that we do locally, such as installing all the dependencies to this particular config. So with Circle CI, I think it's a mandatory step that you have to call checkout. So Circle CI will check out the code in your branch. And then the next, we're going to run a particular command that I'm going to call install project dependencies. And then the command that we want is just npmi. And then I'll just copy this because we want another command for running it. So in this case, it's running the Cypress test, and then our command is npm test. And then if we want to also generate the HTML report, like what we've done on the previous example, so we'll add another step to generate the HTML report. We'll call this generate HTML report. Just gonna copy this again and then replace this with the actual command. And then, of course, we have to store the artifacts. So first, we'll store the test report. And then the other one, oh, IntelliSense, where did you go? But okay, that's fine. So we'll add the Cypress videos. Okay, so we've specified a job here called run Cypress test. And the next thing is we have to specify it in our workflow. So what I'll do is I'm going to define the word workflow here. And then our workflow name is called build. And then in this case, we're just going to refer to the job that we have specified at the top. So it's called run Cypress test. I think that's it. Cool. So I'm just gonna validate this locally and see if it's all good. Hopefully it is. Cool. So what I'll do is I'll just push this again, and then we can see all the different steps, but it's going to be similar. The only difference is we've added the Docker image instead of using the official Cypress orb. Um, Cypress test, not a very good commit message. And then we'll just push this. Cool. Um, as you can see here as well, the previous Circle CI setup, it's all green, and that means that, yeah, it's all good. We've successfully integrated our tests, and everything seems to work fine. So for the other one, just going to create the pull request using the Cypress Docker image. Yeah, make sure everything's so good. And then if we click here, yeah, so you can see here that it's installing our project dependencies first, and then after that, it's gonna just run our tests and then do the other setups. So yeah, hopefully it wasn't as difficult to follow. My daughter was quite distracting this time, but yeah. So hopefully, you have an idea now on how easy it is to integrate Cypress test to Circle CI. For me personally, I would prefer using the Cypress Orb, because as you can see here, we have around 25 lines of code, and on the other one, we only really had like between 8 to 11 lines of code. So it really saves, a lot of effort, and rather than doing all this particular setup on every different projects where you need to integrate Cypress, you just need to call the Cypress Orb. Cool. Just gonna go back to my presentation here because yep, everything's all green. Cool. So for the last bit, because what I've demoed today is quite specific to Circle CI. However, in terms of like generic best practices, there's a lot of articles and talks already out there, with regards to what are the best guidelines. But from me personally, these are the tips that I would like to share. So first of all, start small. Once you have written your first test, try to integrate it to your CI pipeline already. Don't wait until you have completed all your tests, and then wait until the end to integrate it, because you want to be able to have that faster feedback loop as much as possible. And definitely don't jump to CD right ahead and start automating your deployments. CD is really complicated, and it needs a completely different mindset. So stick with CI first and make sure that everyone on the team is comfortable with the workflow. Okay. um, and integrate the fastest test as early as possible. So I mentioned that it's good to have that early feedback loop. And if you can, run different tests in parallel, so you can leverage this in Circle CI by you know um, using different jobs and adding it to your workflow. If you have some API integration tests, you can run it in parallel with your UI tests, or if you have visual tests, you can also run them in parallel. Make test reports visible to the entire team so that they know that when a test failed, it's easy for them, to figure out from the test report why it failed. And you can okay, and you can also integrate to communication channels such as Slack. So if you have any failing test jobs, the team can be alerted if any of the tests are failing. If you do get flaky tests, I suggest to isolate them ASAP and make sure that you fix it. Don't let it block your testing pipeline, because you would then lose that confidence as to how reliable your testing pipeline is. And finally, make sure that you get your whole team's involvement. If you get stuck with any of the steps on how to integrate, make sure you ask for help, ask for feedback, as well as to how your process can be improved continuously. Cool. So just to add more resources that you might find helpful. So if you want to learn more about Circle CI, then I highly suggest reading their Getting Started page. What I demoed today only shows some of its features and is quite powerful. So make sure that you read on their Getting Started documentation. The other resource is a link to the official Cypress Docker image. So the one that I've used today is just their base image. But if you want to use the other images, such as if you want to run it on the Chrome browser, or for example on Firefox, then you have to use a separate Docker image for that. Cool. And with that, I'm gonna take some questions now. So I'm just gonna go on the chat here, look at some of. Yep. So yes, this is quite good. Thanks, Rehan, for saying so. If you're writing YAML, make sure that you also install some extensions. So I think the extension name is called YAML in Visual Studio, just to help you write it much more quicker. And yes, that's right. Shiva, how to pass arguments to Cypress run command when using Orbs. Um, the Cypress documentation page, I believe they've added a couple of examples there. So because what I demoed today is just really, the basic example. But if you head over to their GitHub page, they have a lot of other examples there that you can find. Cool. So from Way, why prefer Circle CI instead of Jenkins? So mainly because it's the most recent tool that I have been using, and I just find it, much quicker to set up, because with Jenkins you have to install the Jenkins server separately. But I've used Jenkins as well in the past, and it's a great tool as well. It's just that for this particular demo, I wanted to show that how easy it is to integrate to a CI pipeline directly from your GitHub page. So that's why I chose Circle CI for this demo. From Bon Stewart, what approach did you made on getting the develop/test environment get accessible when running Cypress tests in Circle CI? As most likely when we try to access those sites via job, it's either getting page unauthorized or page forbidden. So I mean, I think it will depend on what your infrastructure approach is. So, for example, in our case, every time a developer creates a pull request, we also spin up a PR environment, and what we do is we run a subset of our Cypress tests on that PR environment. So because the test URL is dynamic, so it depends on the PR number. We have a config in our Circle CI that will get the version number base URL. Um, will now be used. Okay, just hold on a second. My headset was disconnected. Okay. Am I still audible? Cool. Okay. So it really depends on what your infrastructure setup is. But I haven't really encountered any issues when from Circle CI we're getting unauthorized pages, because we spin up the test environments as we go along. But I know that from experience, I've heard from other teams that, for example, if your site is behind the VPN, then it makes it harder, to run the Cypress test. But I believe there is something in Circle CI called tunneling, if I'm not mistaken, that you can use. So if you haven't looked into that, I highly recommend reading around it. But unfortunately, I can't really give any sort of specific tips on how to use that. Yep, so Hamad will release the video and slides. I can add the link to the slide after this talk, and then Billy will share the recording once it's available. So from Simon, so the not official Cypress orb provides all the necessary libraries and Docker image. Yes, it does. So I believe you can also choose if you want to run it on the different browsers. You just have to pass in the attributes browser, and then if it's Chrome or Firefox. But yeah, so any sort of extra configuration that you have to use, this is all handled by the Cypress orb. So from Shivam, do you prefer to look at artifacts in the pipeline itself or Cypress dashboard? Is there a way to get the Mocha Awesome reports in Cypress dashboards? If not, I guess publishing the artifacts. Yeah. So in our case, we didn't really have the Cypress dashboard in place, so the team only really wanted to use the open source. So we couldn't really leverage the reporting feature in Cypress dashboard. That's why we attach it as artifacts. And so far it's been working really well. So we also attach the Cypress screenshots on each of the tests if it's failing. At the moment, I haven't really integrated the Mocha Awesome report on our work project, but I've done it on my personal projects. So I can send you a link as to how I've done that, if that is helpful. But from the Mocha Awesome report, I found a way to also attach the Cypress screenshots, because by default, if you generate the Mocha Awesome report, it doesn't have all the screenshots that you have that Cypress generates. You need to have some additional code. And if your team prefers something much more visual in terms of the report, and if you don't have access to use the Cypress dashboard, then using extra reporting such as Mocha Awesome might be helpful. Are there any browser incompatibilities in Cypress? So, yep, at the moment, they only really have support for Chrome, Chromium, and all the different variants in the Chrome family. And most recently, they've supported Firefox and Edge as well. So, if you're looking to automate, some of your tests in IE 11 or other browsers, then you won't be able to use Cypress. Can Cypress be run on Firefox browser? Yes, you can. You just need to pass the argument dash dash browser, I believe, and then Firefox has the name, and then you should be able to just run it. Or if you're using the Cypress Visual Test Runner, if you open up the test runner at the beginning, there is a drop down that you can use to select which browser you have. So this will take whatever you have installed in your machine. So if you just want to debug it locally. From Hamad again. So, any limitations of Cypress you found on Edge? I haven't really tested much on Edge because, to be honest, the approach that we've done is we're using Cypress to run it. To run our functional tests on one browser. So in this case, it's Chrome, and then we're using cross-browser visual testing on different browsers just to make sure that we don't have a lot of visual issues on different browsers. So in terms of Edge, I haven't really tested it as much from that particular browser. I meant Cyp. Okay. From Diana, yes. So it's the last lunch and learn session that I have in place for Cypress. But we'll see. Maybe in the future there will be more. Yeah. I'm not really sure if I understood your question correctly, Hamad. Cool. And yeah, thanks, Barrett, for that comment. It's really nice. um, all right, there's a letter, Bebe. And then there's no name from this. It's for mommy, baby. Cool. Do you recommend limiting other browsers only to visual testing? It really depends as to what your testing requirements are. The only reason why we opted this way is because we're currently building a design system at News UK, so it's very visual in terms of the components, and rather than running the same functional tests on different browsers, we just opted to run a visual testing suite that will run a particular component or a particular page on different browsers on different viewports. But like if you want to ask my honest opinion, if you're currently working on something that is like on a website or on a mobile app that is quite visual, I recommend adding some visual testing strategy on top of what you have already. So Shivam, did you use the Cypress inbuilt visual testing capability or a separate tool like ApplyTools? So yes, we're currently using ApplyTools for this cross-browser visual testing, and it's just a really great tool for us at the moment. We managed to run a set of tests on different browsers without incurring additional time in terms of our test run because we're using the ultra fast grid, and it's just been really helpful because we can give feedback to our designers, to our developers as well, if there's any sort of like visual issues. Other teams, they're using the Cypress image snapshot. So because AptituTools is a paid tool, other teams might not have the appropriate budget for that. So as an alternative, we set up running Cypress with a visual tool called Cypress Image Snapshot, which is just a plugin that you install on top of your Cypress tests. Thank you. Yep, thank you, Medina. Thanks, Diana. Should I still recommend Cypress to my team even it cannot support all browsers yet? Um, so if cross-browser testing is really important, then probably it might be worth looking at other alternatives. There's other great tools such as WebDriver.io, and it really depends as to what your priorities are. So, for example, in our case, we found that Cypress has a really great developer experience because we wanted to move to a model where the developers help us as well in writing the tests, not just the unit tests that they do, but also like other tests like visual, accessibility, and the functional tests. And personally, I found that if you provide a tool that is much easier to use for everyone, you get a lot more buy-in. But that's why we opted for other tools as well, like Apply tools, so we can do cross-browser. But if at the moment it's really a must for you to run different functional tests on different browsers, especially if you still have support to use IE 11 or Safari, it might be worth to look at other tools. But what you can do is you can have like a set of tests running in Cypress because it's much quicker to run, like from my personal experience. And then you can have like a subset of tests, for example, using different frameworks. From Sufyan, VPN, do you recommend tunneling or using Orbs? So I think with this tunneling, it's more of a Circle CI issue rather than Cypress. I've only really heard about this particular approach via a colleague because they're trying to run their Cypress test, but it's on a VPN. So they're currently working with our DevOps engineers on how to bypass that. So I don't really have specific tips if you have to use tunneling or if you have to use orbs. Rayhan, it's alright. Yeah, I can answer I can answer some of more of the questions, Billy. From Raihan, so I know that there are proposals already for Cypress to support Safari and IE11. I can't really remember what the issue number is, but if you just search for Cypress support Safari and IE11, they have open proposals already. So who knows? We'll see when the Cypress team will have support for this. Cool, thank you. And Hamad, yes, so if you want to know more about accessibility, there is a recording for the previous Lunch and Learn session where we talked about accessibility testing in Cypress. So I can add a link to that recording on today's meetup. Thank you. Um, yes, we will share the link. How do you integrate your visual test report and your Cypress test report? Yep. So, um, with the visual testing tools, you can have a report at the end. I don't have a personal example here at the moment that I have ready. But if you're using tools such as Cypress image snapshots, every time you have a difference on the images, a different outputs will be generated based on what those differences are. So it will all be stored on a specific on a specific folder called Cypress. I think it's called Cypress slash snapshots. So what you can do is you can then add it as an artifact to your Cypress tests. So when you run the visual tests in your Circle CI pipeline, you can just have an artifact for the Cypress snapshots folder. And then if you then have any differences in your visual testing, you can just go and click the artifacts link to Circle CI, and then it will show what the different images are. Yeah, she's quite yeah, she has a really loud voice this morning. Last Cypress lunch and learn she was really well behaved, but today I guess because it's the last one she decided to join along as well. Cool. I think that's basically everything from my side. So Billy, if you have any more, yeah, I think we can end. Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, but I just want to follow up. Everyone's saying it in the chat, but I just want to say a huge thank you, Marie, for putting together all of these events. 7 events in the space of 3 months is really impressive, and I know you've had some others out there as well. And
Mm.
it's great to see your journey and how far you've come along. Also, thanks to your daughter for keeping us entertained throughout.
I'll wait for
Every
the recording and listen how bad
Yeah,
she is.
she's
Yeah.
good. She's got real potential. So who knows?
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you, Marie. Thank you for everyone for coming along. And I'm certain, Marie, this isn't going to be your last lunch and learn. So take it easy, everyone, and thanks again.
Thank you. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye bye.